All right, welcome everyone. We are going to be reviewing the AMCAS and AACOMAS applications tonight. I appreciate those of you who did tune in to the live version of this session. This is going to be recorded after that, so there won't be any live questions answered during this session. However, I did try to incorporate as many questions as possible into this session. So hopefully this does answer the majority of your questions. Outside of this recording, I would ask that, again, you do double check the AMCAS 2022 applicant guide, the AACOMAS 2022 applicant database for answers to your questions. And in any certain case where you just cannot find an answer and you're not sure, always please reach out to their helplines. Instead of an email address, I do believe they have AMCAS has a question submission. And I actually just called myself, and while the wait is a little long, it was probably about 15 minutes, they were able to answer my questions, my very specific questions, very quickly. So they're a very, very good resource. Please reach out. I also use the chat function on AACOMAS. So again, reach out to them if you have any additional questions or doubts about what to do. So tonight I'm going to be walking through each section of both applications. And then we'll also do a little review of secondary applications and what to expect from them, both in terms of MD school secondaries and DO school secondaries. So the screen you see now is actually the home screen of the AMCAS application, what you'll see when you log in. Just to describe this, obviously your basic information will be in the top left there. The actual application that you'll be filling out is on the top right. The bottom left are some nice helpful links for you to review if you need them. And on the bottom right, you'll see the actual status of the documents that you're having sent into the application. You'll notice that I already filled this out ahead of time just so I can show you some examples of how to do this. And we'll go through this one section at a time. So we're going to start with identifying information. Much of this is very self-explanatory. Again, you're going to put your legal name here that appears on government documents, but then a preferred name if you like. For example, my name is Robert, although I go by Rob. So that is what I want to be called. That is what I want medical schools to potentially call me. So I'm going to let them know that. Any alternate names that do appear on other documents that could be sent to schools, you'd want to just list here as well, so they're aware. In the ID number section, really the only thing you're going to be adding is your NUID. There aren't many other instances that we can think of where you need to add another ID number, especially as this is most likely not going to be applying to any of you. Again, you want to talk about your identity here and continue. So you're going to fill out your high school information. If it was not in the United States, you can still choose that as well. And this is the colleges attended section. So this is any post-secondary institution in the US or Canada and abroad that you've attended. Truly anywhere where you've taken coursework after high school. And we're going to talk about transcripts in a second, but I want to walk through some of the examples that I have here today. So the first thing you'll see is American College of Thessaloniki, which is again where many Northeastern students go for NUN. So that's the first thing that shows up because chronologically it's the first program I attended after high school. So that pops up first and it shows that I attended it from September 2008 to December 2008. I would have then come back and started my spring semester in Boston. But those are the dates for this program. So I'm going to let them know that. You obviously want to locate your school by country. It will give you a pop-up with several options. If for any reason the school does not actually appear here, you can say other not listed and let them know what the school was. You may need to find an address or a location. This was automatically generated for ACT, so I didn't need to do anything there. Program type, undergraduate. Again, my start and end dates. And you want to indicate that for NUN, yes, this was a study abroad program. For each school, it's going to ask you if you authorize AMCAS to release your application to the advisor of this institution. For most of them, you're going to hit yes here. It does help us certainly to have that access. I chose no because I'm not actually sending this out. Transcript request. So this is going to be interesting, and you want to make sure you're understanding exactly which schools do and do not require a transcript to be sent. So as it says here, any US territorial, or Canadian post-secondary institution needs a transcript sent to AMCAS. Even though ACT is not in the United States, it is still one of the American colleges abroad. So because of that, you will need to send a transcript in. It is not considered foreign coursework. So I said, yes, I will be sending a transcript. Then I added Northeastern, which is my main undergraduate degree here. I also added my major, minor, the degree that I'm seeking or have achieved at Northeastern, very similar to how I filled out ACT. I'm also letting them know that I did study abroad at a foreign institution. So this one's a little bit different, right? This is not like ACT because this one is not an American college abroad. This is a foreign institution. So when I chose Australia, it didn't give me any options. So I had to write in the name of the school myself, the city, again, undergraduate program, and the dates that I was abroad. Labeled it as a study abroad program. The difference here is that when it asks if you're requesting a transcript, you're going to say no. This is a foreign institution. You do not need a transcript here. And then it's going to ask you why. The most common option for Northeastern students is going to be this one right here. Foreign institution or study abroad program sponsored by US territorial, or Canadian institution. Credits were transferred. Were they transferred? Yes. Where? Northeastern. In this example, I'm also have attended Northeastern for graduate school. In this specific example, I'm doing a +1 program. So you'll actually notice that my dates of attendance at Northeastern for undergraduate and graduate do overlap here. So I indicated that I attended Northeastern for undergraduate from September 2008 to May 2012, and then graduate school from September 2011 to May 2013. So there is that overlap there, and that's because I was taking graduate courses during my undergraduate time at Northeastern. So there was overlap, and you want to indicate that with the dates attended for a +1 master's program. Make sure you're obviously labeling it as a graduate program. And then finally, I've also listed a summer course that I'm going to be taking this summer at UMass Boston. So just to kind of address some questions for students that may be taking a kind of a one-off summer course outside of Northeastern, this is what it would look like. And then the question that I'll address in a second is, you know, how do I need a transcript from this school? If it's a brand new school I'm attending and I'm currently in that class right now, how would I get a transcript from there? So the ultimate answer is you don't need a transcript from there. And let me show you why. So you put in the school information, you let them know you're going to be taking the course now or in the coming months. It's just for summer. And then you're going to say, no, I don't need a transcript. And the reason why you don't need a transcript is because this is current or future coursework. So it's not something you're going to be able to represent right now. There's no grades. There's nothing you can really give them with a transcript. So they don't need one. So that's what you can click off here. Okay, we'll move on. Okay, so we talked a little bit about transcripts, but now we're getting into the thick of it, right? So we know we don't need a transcript from University of Sydney because it's a foreign institution. We know we don't need a transcript from UMass Boston because that's current coursework and there really isn't a transcript for me to send. We do need a transcript for ACT, so I'm going to be contacting ACT's registrar to have that sent over to AMCAS. And then also I need one from Northeastern for both the undergraduate and graduate programs. When you request your transcript from Northeastern, you can select the which transcripts all option. So it will send both your undergraduate and graduate transcripts from Northeastern at the same time if you did attend grad school at Northeastern. So they should both be sent at the same time and received at the same time. If you want to double check on that, please follow up with AMCAS help. We'll ask you if you've been previously matriculated at a medical school. And then finally here on this page, it's going to ask about institutional actions. So again, we want to make it very clear. We want you to be very honest in this section. If you were ever held responsible or action was taken by Northeastern for a conduct issue, for example, please report that. It's very clear that you must answer yes, even if it's been expunged or deleted from your record. So if you know you were held responsible, for example, for a quiet hours violation in your freshman year, and you think, well, it's expunged now, so I don't need to talk about that, please be honest here and talk about that. Talk about the incident, let them know what happened, and tell them what you learned from that. Do not skip this, do not omit anything. If you do want to double check, if you're still a student, you can reach out to the Oscar office, the conduct office, to inquire if there are any actions against you on your record. Again, it's going to ask for your preferred address and your permanent address. I believe the preferred address is what any sort of mail communications will be sent to, although I believe that's relatively rare these days, but they still want that information. And you should be able to change this information even after you do submit. So if you do move, for example, you'd be able to update them after submission. This is a pretty rare scenario where you'd be putting someone's contact information in that might receive information on your behalf. If you won't have access to any form of communication, or perhaps you're taking an extended vacation or going on a really long hike somewhere, maybe you give permission for someone else to have that information, but typically this is not being utilized. Citizenship information, I can't change this to show you, unfortunately, but obviously you want to let them know exactly where you are a citizen if you're not one of the US. And then legal residence, again, this depends on your situation and your background. Some schools obviously will use this information to determine whether you are an in-state applicant and you're eligible for in-state benefits at their program. So please do some research if you're not sure which state you might be a resident of. It could be possible that you can't claim residency in any state, and that is an unfortunate reality for some people. But if you want to know, then please do some research. If you happen to be a resident of multiple states, you have to choose one. You can only put one on AMCAS. So please choose the one that is potentially the most beneficial to you, depending on what schools you're going to be applying to. Self-identification questions. Languages spoken. Just a small piece of advice here is to obviously never put any proficiency greater than what you actually can speak, in the case that someone sees this and starts speaking to you in that language at your interview and you're caught off guard. So please make sure this is accurate. Childhood information, a little bit more about you and your background that medical schools would like to know, just to understand the journey traveled so far to where you are today. If you do decline to answer, there's no data we have that indicates that that's a negative used against you. It's just unfortunately less information that a medical school has about, again, that journey you've traveled so far. If you can provide that information, it can be helpful for them to understand, just your situation and what kind of work it took for you to get to this point in your life. Additionally here, this does not need to be down to the decimal point, but if you can provide a rough estimate of how you paid for college or education, post-secondary education, they would like to know what that looked like as well. Military service, that applies to you. Of course, similarly to institutional actions, felony and misdemeanor, please be honest here. If you're not sure about these things, please reach out to the appropriate authorities to find out more, but you want to report anything that could potentially pop up on a background check. Disadvantage status, certainly get questions about this in terms of, do I actually qualify? Is this appropriate for me to be claiming? There is a little pop-up here that gives you a little bit more information about some of the programs or situations that the AAMC or medical schools might consider you a disadvantaged applicant. So please read through this, and if any of these apply to you, you would be able to claim that and talk about why you believe that you are a disadvantaged applicant, that it maybe has been more difficult, again, for you to get to this point today where you're able to apply to medical school. Parent information or guardian information, any siblings you may have, and then dependents. Okay, now we get to the fun part, which is coursework. So the first thing I'm going to absolutely ask that you do is please watch the basic tutorial. If you have AP credit, please watch that. If you are entering any study abroad coursework for foreign institutions, please watch this as well. And then current and future coursework too. So I am going to talk a little bit about all of this, but I want you to please watch these too. And obviously refer to the appropriate applicant guides if you're still a little bit lost. So the first one that pops up here is American College of Thessaloniki. This was my NUN location that I went to. Again, because it is an American college overseas, I am going to be requesting a transcript from this school. And what I'm going to do is put my coursework in under this school exactly as it appears on my ACT transcript. So even though this coursework transferred into Northeastern, because it is a US school on its own, you're entering the coursework as it appears on the ACT transcript, not as it appears at Northeastern. You are then not going to report the ACT transfer credits when you're inputting your courses at Northeastern, okay? So you're not double posting those courses. You're only posting them under the school that you actually took those courses at. This also applies for transfer credits from other US or Canadian institutions. So if you did bring in transfer credits from another school into Northeastern, for example, dual enrollment credits, you're going to list it under that school's entry, not under Northeastern, and you're going to list it as it appears on that school's transcript, okay? So the ultimate rule here, and again, there's one small exception, but the ultimate rule here is that you're not listing courses twice, because that would be weird when they calculate your GPA. So you're only listing courses, again, under the school that you took them at as they appear on that school's transcript. All right, so you also notice, I may not have mentioned this before, even though I did NUN, I started at that in September 2008, I'm still listing September 2008 as my start date at Northeastern. One, because I believe there may be a credit that's assigned from Northeastern when you do NUN, but also you're still considered a Northeastern student at that point. So please have that included in your Northeastern timeline. Okay, some examples for just unique situations when entering undergraduate coursework on AMCAS. So advanced placement credit, that is going to be put in as first semester fall of your freshman year. It's going to be put in exactly as it appears on your transcript for whatever course it was awarded for. Number of credit hours should show up. And then I believe typically it shows up as a T grade on your transcript. So you want to reflect that accurately. You'll also be able to then check it off as an advanced placement course down here. Lecture only, this was the chemistry lecture that I was awarded credit for, so I'm going to mark that off as well. And then course classification, again, this one's pretty straightforward. It was a chemistry course. It's going to be in chemistry classification. But the general rule of thumb when you're classifying each course you put in is based off the majority content of the course, right? So for example, this mostly happens with psych courses. So if you're a BNS student and you took a really bio-heavy psych course, you'd be able to classify that as biology. Even though it might say psych here, you still have the right to classify that as biology. AMCAS, when they're doing their verification, may end up disagreeing with you and changing it back. But again, you can certainly label it as that if you believe that's what the majority of the content was. Most of you will have the professional development co-op course credit. Just kind of signaling here, you can count that as an other course, and then actual co-op as well. So this is what it will look like when you're entering it, right? So if this, for example, is a spring semester co-op, it goes into the summer. It is kind of broken up into 2 bars on your transcript. So you want to put those both in as they appear. Sometimes you may see that if you took a course while you were on co-op, it may kind of bump in between here. That's totally fine. Just list it again exactly as it appears on your transcript. For co-op courses, you just want to make sure that you are not putting any credit hours because you don't get credit hours for co-op. The transcript rate is an S. You can label it as lecture only. That tends to be the default. I know probably wasn't a lecture, but you can label it as that. And then make sure you're also calling it a pass-fail course as it was. One other thing you may notice here is that the spring semester co-op entry is labeled as 2010, 2011, and the summer semester co-op is labeled as 2011, 2012. That's because AMCAS sees the summer semester as the start of the next academic year. So I know this can be a little bit tricky. Even if Northeastern sees summer semester as part of the year before, AMCAS sees it as part of the next academic year. So once you're switching to entering summer courses, you want to make sure you're just updating this to the next academic year. I know it looks a little funky because this is, again, one co-op, but that's just how AMCAS wants you to categorize it. I'm going to skip over University of Sydney for just a second, just to talk about this. So again, in this scenario, I am a +1 student and I started taking graduate courses before I earned my bachelor's degree, right? So this is kind of a fake course that I'm putting here, but this is going to be a graduate course that I took in my senior year before I graduated. I'm going to put it under my Northeastern bachelor's degree because it did ultimately go towards my bachelor's degree as well, just as it appears on my bachelor's degree transcript. And I'm going to label it as senior year because that's when I took it. Okay. The one thing about this is that it's going to show up again, and it's going to show up again under my Northeastern graduate school entry here. So this is, again, the only time where you're going to be repeating coursework. Because it was used both towards your bachelor's degree and your master's degree at the same time. The only difference is that I'm going to call this graduate coursework instead of senior because I'm in graduate school, the graduate school section now. That's the big difference here. Everything else remains the same. And you're going to do this for all graduate courses that you took in undergrad, okay? So any graduate courses you took as part of the +1 will be put that you earned before your bachelor's degree was awarded, you'll put here, and you'll also repeat them at the start of your master's degree down here. All right. So University of Sydney, so this is my study abroad foreign coursework section. So the difference with this one, and it's a little tricky, so please listen close. So the difference with this one is that I don't have a transcript to reference, right? We're not sending in the transcript from University of Sydney. So even though I'm putting the school here and I'm listing the courses that I took, I'm going to be using the information from my Northeastern transcript, okay? So you're going to put the courses you took. If you went to a foreign institution, you're going to put those courses down as they appear in your Northeastern transcript, which is why I have T grades here. So if I were to actually look at my transcript from University of Sydney, of course, it's not going to say T, but we don't have that. We're not sending that in. So we have to use the information from our Northeastern transcript here. That's how you put that in. Okay. And again, you will not list this coursework under Northeastern, just under the school that you took the course at. For UMass Boston, again, this is just my fake current course that I put in. I labeled it as current future, just so they understand and know that. Other notes about entering coursework that I want to bring up while we're on here. For students that may have done a 5-year undergraduate program, you may be wondering, well, how do I label freshman, sophomore, junior, senior? There's only 4 options, and I did 5 years. What we'd actually recommend here is that you look at all your undergraduate credits and divide them by 4. Label the first quarter as freshman, second quarter as sophomore, third as junior, and fourth as senior. That way you have an appropriate year to put for each quarter of credits. The other thing, again, if you do have dual enrollment courses, so if you did take college level courses in high school, again, make sure you're having a transcript sent in from that school. And when you're entering coursework here for those dual enrollment courses, you're actually going to qualify them as high school level courses because that's when you took them. Okay. I know all this is in the guide too in the coursework section, so please read through that if this is confusing at all. All right, so work and activities. I've just put one example here, physician shadowing. Many students do, or applicants do choose to combine physician shadowing into one entry to save space, as you do only have 15 entries that you can put in this section. So space is rather limited here. I've given, I've done 25 hours at this shadowing opportunity, and I'm gonna put in the physician's contact information and talk a little bit about what I was able to observe and what I really learned and got out of that situation here. So what I'd recommend when you're filling out the activity section, please again, reflect on what you've gotten out of these experiences, how they've motivated you to get to the point where you are today, how they potentially could be useful or will influence you when you are a physician. All of those questions are good to ask yourself as you're writing these descriptions. This should not be kind of a one-for-one resume reflection, right? If you're just putting in the daily tasks and responsibilities that you did here, it's not going to be very interesting to the people that are reading it. It's not going to feel as though you've been able to reflect on these activities and understand how they apply to medical school or apply to your future as a doctor. So very much like the self-assessment document where we forced you to reflect on what you got out of everything you've done, really reflect on, okay, how has this shadowing experience helped me understand that I want to be a physician? How has my research co-op helped me understand the importance of science in the everyday life of a physician or to the future of medicine? Some of these things sound very profound and deep, but again, this process is so full of reflection. And I really want you to pull those values out here. Think about your personal statement when you talked about there. What was that primary central motivating factor that you talked about is kind of pushing you towards applying to medical school? Can you kind of reference those things here, pull in some of those central themes and ideas into the activities that you're writing about, creating that kind of central, consistent narrative throughout your entire application? Again, very lofty ideas here. Please, utilize our writing center at Northeastern if you want to have these checked out. There are resources available. At the end of the day, though, like with the personal statement, these have to be in your own words. And again, you do have creative freedom on the activity section. I don't want you to feel like you have to enter things a specific way. But again, our advice is using this space to your best ability to convey that message. This is what I got out of this experience. This is why I'm including it here. This is why it made the top 15 cut, so to speak. And again, please feel free to include some fun things as well, right? So obviously you want to include your major work responsibilities, volunteering, clinical research, shadowing, potentially publications, presentations, posters, things like that. But there's also a hobbies category for a reason. I think it's nice to be able to reflect on some things you do outside of the pre-med journey and let these schools know that you're a human and you have these interests that excite you and that you could potentially bring those to life or even add them to their medical school class. Okay, so letters of evaluation. Again, this information is included in the MD and DO applicant guide that was sent to everyone. You are going to be using my information when you put in the request for your committee letter or letter packet. So let me walk you through that. So again, if you're going to be receiving a committee letter, please click on committee letter. And then again, you're going to be putting in my information, which is in the MD and DO applicant guide. It may ask for a title. It's not a requirement. I think everyone has been putting Northeastern _ Harrington _ MD. So that's totally fine if you want to call it that, but you're welcome to call it whatever you like. If you're going to be requesting a letter packet, obviously you're just going to select this and put the same information in. And then individual letters, obviously this is for any additional letters outside the committee letter, or if you are applying with individual letters this cycle, you put them in one by one this way. Just as an FYI, I do not need the letter request form that you can generate. We are able to access your application without that to upload the letter. So we do not need that specifically. When you click this, it actually also shows you the schools that I've selected so far and which ones I'm actually going to have the committee letter sent to. And that will, I'll show you in just a second. Okay, so I've added 3 medical schools so far. It has let me know what my balance is at this point. And it lets you know which letters of evaluation you are going to have sent to them. And you can customize that. So for example, if I want to add Stanford, and let them know that I'm applying to the regular MD program, not the MD PhD program. Not applied in previous years. And this is where all the letters requests that you've put in so far are going to show up. So if you, hopefully you'll want your committee letter sent everywhere. And then if you have several other maybe individual evaluators, and maybe one specifically is for Stanford, this is where you can click that off and let them know that you want that sent there. You just wouldn't select that for the other schools you're applying for. And my balance is growing. Okay, hopefully some people get this reference. But this is obviously something that you've all been working on for quite some time now, and many the advisors in our office have most likely been working with you on that and provided feedback to at least one draft of your personal statement. But this is where you copy and paste that. In here, remember, it is 5,300 characters exactly. So please make sure you're writing towards that before you copy and paste it in. I'll also say that kind of stylistic edits do not copy over well here, so plain text is the best way to format your essay. I have not taken the MCAT, so I do not have any scores that show up here. But if you've already taken the MCAT or received your scores, they should pop up here as it is automatically available to AMCAS. If you haven't taken it yet, you can let them know when you're planning to do so. I don't believe many, if any, applicants are going to be including additional scores, but that is something you could do. Oh, and that actually is, I'm always shocked by that. That actually is the end of the application. So hopefully that seems maybe a little bit shorter and less intimidating than you thought it was going to be. Again, the area that's going to take the most amount of time is the coursework area, because you are inputting those courses one by one as they appear on the transcripts that you're having sent over. Again, if you have any questions on that, please watch the video walkthroughs that are available or check out the applicant guides for more information. All right, I'm gonna go back to this just for a second. So on the bottom right here, it actually will let you track some of the documents that you need to have come in. It will actually show you that I don't need one from University of Sydney and I don't need one from UMass Boston. That's because we accepted, or we put in for transcript exemption requests for both of these schools. One, because this is foreign coursework, and two, because this is current/future coursework only. The status of your Northeastern transcripts, both undergraduate and graduate, and then your ACT transcript as well. This will also show you when we upload your committee letter after you've requested it and gone through that formal request process. We will be writing them again in order as they're requested, and they will be uploaded over the summer. You can certainly submit your application with this saying not received. In fact, it is part of our process that you do so and upload a copy of your submitted application to MAP first. You can also submit your application without the required transcripts not coming in yet, although it's always a good idea to go ahead and request those as early as possible. All right, and I just want to make sure that I have all of the points for AMCAS covered before I move on. Yes, all right, so now we're going to move on to AACOMAS. It might kick me out here, so let me just refresh the page just to make sure I'm in a good spot. Okay, so we move over to AACOMAS, and it's going to look similar in some ways and different in others, right? So you have kind of these 4 areas again, but you also have a couple tabs at the top. So this is actually where you're going to be adding programs in this column. I've already added 1 or 2 programs just to make this a little bit easier. But the actual application is split into these 4 sections. The first I'm going to start with, which is pretty basic, is your personal information. So it is going to start with a release statement. just kind of some iTunes user agreement type of speak. So read through them, but please also check them off as you go. This is up to you if you want to release your information to DO schools before you actually submit your application. They might actually send you information if you'd like that. I'm going to choose no because I don't want them thinking I'm actually going to be applying this cycle, but you can let them know you're going to be applying even before you submit. Advisor release, again, please select yes here. That's very helpful for us to be able to keep track of your application and understand how it's doing and where it's going over the next year. So if you want to get text messages, you can sign up and allow that to happen here. Again, very similar to AMCAS biographic information. Current address, they don't give you a preferred and permanent. They just give you a current address that, again, you should be able to update if it changes after you submit. Phone number and email. Citizenship information, again, if you are not a resident or a citizen of the country, you can tell them, again, where you do hold citizenship. Again, same thing as we talked about before, make sure you're doing some research into where you're an actual resident. I believe you're also able to say other unknown, or they actually have an international option here as well, which is helpful. Parent or guardian information. Race and ethnicity questions. This is a different one from AMCAS. There is an influences page that asks you a little bit about how you actually got interested or involved in medicine. So in this example, I've kind of made up that, yes, I do have an MD or DO in the family. My aunt Jane Doe went to NYIT and graduated in 1987. So they're asking that just to understand more about your background and, again, where this interest may have come from. I hope you choose pre-health advisor here, or we've had some role in opening your mind or introducing you to osteopathic medicine, but please just check any that apply. If you've been to a presentation or met with a representative before. And I'm guessing that student will be the most appropriate choice for many of you here. Languages, military status, misdemeanor and felony, again, just like on AMCAS. And similarly, this is just like the institutional action. This actually does differentiate between academic infractions and conduct infractions. So again, you can delineate that here and obviously provide that explanation just like I did on AMCAS. A little bit shorter of a word character count here. So please be cognizant of that. Denied readmission to a school, license taken away. Again, some more background information in terms of being potentially a disadvantaged applicant, very similar to AMCAS. We'll actually ask a little bit about family income here, and you can look into this to see if you do fit into this description. And one other thing here that's different from AMCAS that I just want to be clear about. Did your school move to offering online only curriculum during COVID-19? Please hit yes here. Northeastern did move to online only when the pandemic first hit. Yes, that obviously did change in subsequent semesters, but the answer to this question is still yes. This is also yes. Did you have an opportunity to receive a letter grade for any of your courses taken during COVID-19? Pass-fail was optional last spring. So you want to say yes, you did still have the option to receive a letter grade. And then there's a COVID-19 question that isn't on AMCAS, but AACOMAS did want to include that to give applicants an opportunity to talk about, again, things that may have been impacted or perhaps canceled, put on hold, things you may have lost or not able to do because of COVID. So please feel free to talk about that here and maybe talk about some plans to potentially shadow a DO that were canceled or moved forward past the application. And I wouldn't leave it at that too. I'd still talk about potentially how you plan to achieve those once the pandemic has tapered down a little bit, or again, what you were able to do in lieu of maybe a canceled opportunity. High school information. Colleges attended. So again, very similar to AMCAS, you want to add every post-secondary institution that you've attended. You can see here I have it somewhat similar set up to how it was on AMCAS, except I've chosen my actual undergraduate institution, Bridgewater, instead of Northeastern. And I also did the same thing here with the +1 program, the fake +1 program, where I'm going to set it up the exact same way, where I'm indicating that I took courses as part of my master's degree before actually graduating from, before actually earning my bachelor's degree. And I can showcase that when I put the individual courses in based on the semesters that I'm, or the year, the time of year that I'm putting them in for. And that's on the next section. I'll show you that. Again, yes, Bridgewater or / Northeastern, ACT, they're both going to require transcripts because they're US institution or US abroad college. University of Sydney is not going to require a transcript because it is a foreign institution. One difference to note with AACOMAS and with all liaison applications is that you want to be careful about individual DO programs, right? Some individual DO programs may still want a transcript from a foreign institution. So please check on the policies and procedures of the schools you're actually applying to, check their websites, contact their admissions if you're not sure. If they do require it, what you can do is actually order a foreign evaluation right through here. So World Education Services is the kind of go-to company. You'll be able to go visit their website, have them do an evaluation of your foreign transcript, and they'll send it directly to AACOMAS so that your DO programs that need it will be able to access it. So please just pay attention to that. So for your Northeastern transcripts being sent to AACOMAS, I did send out specific instructions for that recently. If you were to click on this, none of these unfortunately apply to Northeastern. So what you can do in terms of attaching the transcript request form to your request to the registrar's office is go to option 2 and download the form. I know it says a mailed paper transcript, but this is what allows you to download that ID form and then actually download it and attach it to the request when you're requesting it from the registrar's office. That just helps them organize it a little bit better and quicker. If you do already have sent it out without this attached to it, that's totally fine. They don't 100% need this. It just can help expedite them matching it up. But I've already spoken to students who've had it sent out without that form, and it's already been received. Same with ACT. I believe they're doing, oh, sorry about that. I believe they're doing mail transcripts this year. So you want to, again, attach that form when you request through ACT, and please contact the registrar's office again. Again, I'm not going to be requesting a transcript from UMass Amherst because these are current / future courses, and that is not a requirement for those schools. When I go to transcript entry, just double check here. So it may appear when you're looking through this that it still wants a transcript from UMass Amherst, but you actually don't. So if you're only putting in current or future coursework at a school, you don't need a transcript. It makes that very clear here for the University of Sydney. You can't even put in foreign coursework under University of Sydney. But for UMass Amherst, how I know that is that when you go to check status and you look at your transcripts, it's actually going to tell you, you don't need one from University of Sydney because it's a foreign institution. You don't need one from UMass Amherst because you're still attending. That's all you have is current coursework. Obviously, you're going to need any from these two. So if you're in doubt, go to the check status page and look at the transcript status there. Apologies for that little diversion there. Okay, so under each school, again, you want to do just like for AMCAS, you want to put in courses as they appear on your transcript in the correct order. So similarly, just a few things to notice here. One of the big differences with AACOMAS is that you're going to put in the courses as they appear on your transcript. And then after you do that, that's when you're going to go in and label them as AP or study abroad or honors or withdraw, whatever that special status is. You do that afterwards. In AMCAS, you're doing it at the same time. You're checking those little boxes at the bottom. For AACOMAS, you're going to do it afterwards. So it is different in that regard. It's unfortunate. I wish it could be a little bit more consistent, but I'll walk through what that looks like in a second. You'll notice that all of the courses I put in for my freshman year at Bridgewater / Northeastern all have T grades. That's because I'm looking at these as AP credits, right? And AP credits show up as T on my transcript. It doesn't say AP here because I'm going to mark them as AP in a different section. Again, I know it's a little confusing, but that is how AACOMAS does things. The other thing I'll just note here is that for your co-op entry, there's no other option on AACOMAS, so the best option to choose is other health prof. Again, 0 credits, yes. So just pay attention to that, but otherwise it's a very, very similar process. Once you've put in all the appropriate courses for your undergraduate institution, if you did NUN, for any courses outside of Northeastern, then you're going to hit review and finalize my transcript. And this is when you go through and apply special tags to all the courses that you've done. It's going to ask you, what is your primary college? For you, it's obviously going to be Northeastern. Taking lab courses. Yes, I did. So I'm going to go through all my colleges that I put courses in for and label all lab courses. So obviously I labeled the lab for biology for Gen Bio as a lab course. And I think that was the only example I provided here. But once you've selected all the correct courses, you hit done, then you move on to the next one. Did you repeat any classes? No, I did not. Did you get any AP credits? Yes, I did. So my entire first semester where I put in my AP credits, yes, I just marked those all as AP. Awesome. Moving on. No. Taking honors courses, I just made up that my first year writing was honors, and then my spring Gen Chem course was honors. Taking the courses while studying abroad. So yeah, so the two things that you do here. So if you did a study abroad program, so for example, in what I've used on this application, I believe was University of Sydney, this is another difference. So you're going to actually put the courses from University of Sydney under Northeastern as they appear in your Northeastern transcript. So again, different from AMCAS, right? On AMCAS, you're putting the courses under University of Sydney. AACOMAS does not even allow you to enter coursework under University of Sydney. So you need to put those courses under Northeastern just as they appear on your Northeastern transcript. And then when you go into this section, you can go in and label them as study abroad. And the grades are going to be T's as well, because that's how they transfer to Northeastern. If you did NUN, obviously you want to click down to your NUN institution and make sure you're checking all those courses as study abroad. And that's it. Continuing education courses, do you have any certificates or licensures from courses you've taken? This is where you would want to add that, and you can actually upload a copy of a certificate that you achieved. Tests, please remember that for the MCAT, you will need to sign into your AAMC account and have your test scores sent to AACOMAS. They do not automatically get sent over. Again, I don't have any scores here because I haven't taken it yet, and let them know I'm taking it on May 20th. Okay, and that is the end of this section. Supporting information, so evaluations, again, just are very similar to AMCAS. So if you're requesting a committee letter or a letter packet, I want you to hit yes here. There is no separate letter packet option, so just hit yes if you're getting either a committee letter or a letter packet from our office. Again, you're going to put my information in here. It will ask for a due date. July 31st is just fine. A personal message, you can just send me a nice hello or whatever you want to put in here. Just keep it nice, please. Please waive your right to access. We do not share committee letters or letter packets with our applicants. and then check these off as well. Experiences, again, same exact advice as I said for AMCAS. The difference here is that you don't have a 15 limit. You can add much more than that. Quality over quantity is certainly a good piece of advice I'll share with you. You can kind of stretch things out though, right? So if you're combining multiple shadowing opportunities on AMCAS, you do have the opportunity to split those up and talk about them at an individual pace here. So take advantage of that. But again, try to keep it, again, quality versus quantity. And another nice thing is that you can actually split up your experiences with your achievements, right? So you can talk about your articles, publications, posters, presentations here versus adding them to your experiences. So it does even kind of add even more space for you to talk about what you've done. I will show you that this is a little bit restricted, different than the categorizations in AMCAS. So just make your best judgment call here. You don't actually have to add a contact information for AACOMAS. They do require contact information on AMCAS, so that is a difference here as well. If you can put someone, it's probably a good idea to do so. One of the kind of funny things, if you're putting like a club position, it's still going to ask you whether it was full-time, part-time. Part-time is fine for things like that. And then just make sure you're answering the questions here. And just do your best when you're putting in hours for both AMCAS and AACOMAS, right? You don't want to make things up or potentially aggrandize how much work you've put in, but do your best to accurately calculate how many hours you've dedicated to each activity. Finally, here, your personal statement. So again, it's also 5,300 characters. No need to do a different personal statement for GEO schools, although you're welcome to change it if you want to. Same thing with, it's not going to like stylized text. So please just make sure your statement is plain text. And so if you did, once you do add programs from this page, you'll see any of the material show up in this bottom right section. So the only one I've added so far is UNECOM. When I click into their page here, you want to make sure you're filling everything out, right? It's going to give you a good amount of information, but it's also going to ask some questions. This is their supplemental application. This is their quote unquote secondary application. So again, please make sure you're filling these out as you go so that when you submit, everything's all done. So this is their secondary. You'll kind of get this out of the way nice and early and be able to move on to an interview stage with Unicom after you submit this. Fingers crossed. What schools will also might have you do is actually match up the courses that you put into the course entry section to their prerequisites. So this just makes it easy for them to understand what courses you're going to be qualifying as meeting their prerequisites. If you're having any trouble with this or you're not sure if some of these would count, please reach out directly to their admissions for more information or potential exceptions or any flexibility they may have. Obviously, this is the submit screen. I'm not ready to submit yet. This is where you'll do it, and this is where it will charge you. And then again, you can check the status of everything here on this page. All right, let me just double check that there's anything I missed for AACOMAS. For AACOMAS, one thing that's also a little bit different, if you did do a 5-year undergraduate program, instead of dividing your credits by 4, you can actually label your 4th year and 5th year as both senior year. That is part of the AACOMAS instructions. That's a little bit different. And then again, like I said, for students that are in a +1, you can again put those courses that you took, the graduate courses you took in undergrad, you can put those twice. You put them once when you're putting out your undergraduate semesters, and you'll put it again when you're filling out your graduate semester. So that's the only time you can do that. All right. So now we're going to move on to the final portion of this presentation, which is going to be talking about secondary applications. So this is the next step, right? After you've submitted your primary applications, this is what to expect afterwards. So again, like we said, some of those GEO supplemental applications are going to be in the primary, so you won't need to worry about it. But there are potentially DO schools that could send you emails with additional questions, portals, things to fill out as well. So please be cognizant of that. For students or applicants applying through AMCAS, this is the primary way of receiving secondaries. They'll be sent to you typically via email after you've submitted your primary application. So we're going to talk about the purpose of secondaries. We're going to talk about what's typically included, the importance of pre-writing if you have the time to do so, how to use them to your advantage, actually receiving them, and then obviously the timeline to get them in. So what is the purpose of the secondary application? So as you can probably tell, when we really went through it, the main application, the primary application, isn't really that long. The main parts you have to talk about yourself are in the activities section and in your personal statement. But those sections are meant for everyone to read, every school you're applying to. Secondary applications, supplemental applications, give you a chance to actually direct and specify your answers toward those specific institutions themselves, right? They also want to understand your core competencies, right? So the AAMC has that list of core competencies that we have included in the MD and DO applicant guide. And those are important to consider, again, as you're filling out your application, as you're answering secondaries, as you're practicing for interviews over the next year. They also use secondaries to make final decisions about who they're actually going to be inviting for interviews in the fall. So it certainly is an important part of the process. So what's typically included? So like I said before, school-specific questions, these are sent directly to you by each school. So it's not an AAMC process. It's not an AACOMAS process. It is an individual school process. The actual secondaries themselves look very different. So again, there's no uniform format that schools have to abide by here. They determine what's on their secondary, what they're going to be asking you, and how they evaluate that. But typically what you can expect is a few short essay questions, many of which will be similar to some of the questions we asked you in the self-assessment all the way back in January. So that document may actually make a comeback soon. Some secondaries will ask you to re-enter information you've already entered. Please just bear with that and make sure that you're giving them all the information they need. They just want to double check and make sure that you are meeting their requirements. Secondaries are, do typically cost some amount of money as well. It can be one of the more pricey parts of the application process. And the prices do vary depending on the school, but typically you'll find that the average is around $100 per secondary. So please make sure that you're cognizant of that and potentially saving up for this process. If you haven't already applied for the fee assistance programs for these application services, I would certainly advise that you do so. So that you can potentially use those benefits for this process. Schools do not have to waive secondary fees if you are accepted into these fee assistance programs. However, they typically do, understanding that there's a reason why you qualify for the program, and it would be beneficial to you as an applicant to waive this fee. So how does this actually work in terms of committee letter timing? So we write our committee letters throughout the entire summer in the order that requests come in. So you may actually get your secondaries before we upload your committee letter. This is incredibly common and is not disadvantageous to you as an applicant. And again, if for those of you that are filling out secondaries before you even submit the primary application, you're definitely going to be completing your secondaries before we get a chance to write your committee letter. A secondary may not be marked as fully complete until the committee letter is uploaded and submitted. Again, that's okay. Certainly we get questions about this every year, and we need to reiterate that medical schools understand what we are doing. Pre-health committees around the country are working on this in a similar timeline every single year, often throughout the entire summer and sometimes even into the fall. They understand that, they're familiar with that timeline. Our goal is always to complete this as soon as we can, but at the highest quality. So please do not fear. We are familiar with this process, and so are medical schools. And again, to kind of demonstrate that, schools may even invite you for an interview after you submit your secondary, but before our committee letter is actually uploaded. right? So make sure that you're being timely in how you fill yours out as well. And of course, we make that promise to you that we will complete your committee letter in the appropriate timeline. Another piece of the secondary timeline is the Casper test. So some medical schools, both MD and DO, will require the Casper. So many of you, if not all of you, will end up taking it this summer. We advise taking it right after or soon after you finish your primary. Some of you may even take it beforehand. It can be rather more convenient to know where you're actually applying, so you know ahead of time which schools to send Casper to, but of course you can have it sent out after the fact as well. The point of Casper is it's another tool for medical schools to use when they're evaluating you and they're in a holistic assessment, for example, to see how you react to certain situations, right? So there is definitely a move towards that that medical schools are taking. An example, of course, would be MMI style interviews where they really want to know how you react to ethical, moral situations that maybe are cloudy and don't have a true right or wrong answer. And I think that's one of the things we want to emphasize here. There's no expectation that you study or do lots of preparation for the Casper. In many ways, it's just something you take, answer honestly, and just be yourself as you're answering those questions. It's not a pass-fail. You can register on their website, takecasper.com. We have included that in the MD and DO applicant guide as well. And yeah. So pre-writing. So we say this a lot. We use this word a lot. So most of you will be submitting your applications most likely at the end of May or sometime in June. This is then the time for you to start focusing on pre-writing for secondaries. So we have included, there's one on the screen. However, there are also this one and another one included in the MD and DO applicant guide. So please check those out. There's databases for both MD and DO programs and all of their past secondary questions. So it's good to use those to start pre-writing your responses to these questions. That way, when you get them, typically in July, you're able to quickly edit them and send them out to each school. Yes, they can change from year to year, but typically they don't change too much. So it's safe to at least write some templates for those responses and again, update them as you need to. So some typical questions that you're going to probably be getting, right? Why are you interested in this specific program? How would you add to the diversity? Describe an obstacle or challenge you've overcome. Again, a lot of these, again, are on the self-assessment. You've already answered these questions. Please take a look at that and see what you wrote. Maybe it's changed, evolved since you've written that in January, and how you can potentially apply that to your responses on the secondaries as well. Have you taken any time off from your undergraduate studies? Please, if you have this question on the secondary, do not, co-op is not a time off from your undergraduate education, right? That is built into your Northeastern undergraduate education. So please do not consider that to be time off. If you took a leave of absence, for example, yes, a personal leave, that would be time off. Again, that's in between starting and finishing undergraduate, not a gap year, but a co-op as well is not time off from your education. And then typically they'll have an optional question. Is there anything else we should know? This can be a good spot to potentially address any inconsistencies on your application, areas that you think may look a little odd that you want to talk about here, just to kind of preempt any questions they may ask you in an interview. But it's also a space to potentially include information that helps them understand why you're applying to their school, that they just simply didn't ask you in any other part of the application. Right, so again, you should be doing research into each institution. When you're pre-writing, take some time to actually research, read through their websites, look at the programs they're offering in research. When do they actually start their clinical exposure? Is that something that is exciting for you if they started a little bit earlier? What is their curriculum like? Is it more team-based? Is it more lecture-based? What works for you? Is that good for your learning style, right? I constantly use the phrase plugging in, right? You want to plug in your interests, your goals and your experiences into what the school is doing, what they tend to gravitate towards, what their mission is, what their vision is. Again, plugging in what you've done, what you hope to do into what they're offering, building that bridge, and helping just to convince them that it is the best choice for you. It is the best program for you. So once you get your secondaries, you want to look at the templates you've potentially worked on when you were pre-writing. And again, just make sure that they make sense, right? Did the question you were responding to in your pre-writing actually come through? Was it the same exact question? Do you need to update it, edit it, make sure it's relevant? Proofread, right? Again, Writing Center is a wonderful resource for both current students and alumni. Have friends, families, mentors look over it and just make sure that you're getting rid of any errors in those responses. And again, throughout this whole process, everything has character counts on it. Make sure that you're aware of that and including a full response, even if they're giving you short character counts. We recommend that you submit secondaries within 2 weeks of receiving them, regardless of when they're actually due, right? Prioritization is probably going to be really important here. So if there is a school that you maybe are more interested in and it's a school that maybe is a reach school for you and you know it's going to be a better chance for you if you are able to be one of the first they actually look at, then prioritize that and finish that secondary first. That makes sense, right? So don't feel bad about doing that. Or you want the schools that you're most interested in attending and most likely to potentially say yes to have your information first, to see your application is complete first, so you can potentially move on to an interview when there's still open seats in that school and hopefully, fingers crossed, be offered a spot there. You may also find that some schools have a small amount of questions or maybe just no questions. Maybe it's just a couple of checkboxes they want you to answer. So if you notice that, obviously quickly fill those out to get those in and then focus on those ones that are a little bit longer. Okay. And that's it for today. If you have any questions about the process with AMCAS, AACOMAS, again, please review some of the tutorials they have on their websites, read through the guides one more time. If it's a very specific Northeastern question, please ask us. We'll do our best to answer that. If we don't have the answer, we will probably redirect you to the AMCAS helpline or the AACOMAS helpline, which again, I used myself today. Very, very helpful, very quick. Ultimately answered a pretty complicated specific question about that +1 program. So I know they're good resources. Please don't be afraid to reach out. If you do have questions regarding specific school requirements, do not hesitate to reach out to admissions offices at those schools. They're the ones that make those final decisions and can help you ahead of time before it's potentially too late. Questions on secondaries, feel free to ask us. We'll do our best to help you there, and we'll go from there. I'll be sending out a very informational email in the near future, so please look forward to that. And again, thank you so much for tuning in to this rather lengthy presentation. I hope it clarified a lot for you. Have a great rest of your day.